Welcome back. This is session 2 of our Thrive Together Personal Finance Wellness Summit, Your Money and Your Mind. So, we are so happy that many of you who had an opportunity to stick around. We just completed our session 1 of our day 2 session, and we wanted to. First of all, let me introduce myself. That's very rude. My name is Dominique Velger. I'm Community Engagement Specialist. Also joining me is Migdalia Gomez. She's AVP Community Engagement Specialist as well.
Yeah.
She's waving. And our prime panelist will be here in just a minute. You can see her on the screen. But I wanted to just kind of deal with some of the household items. We'll be reducing some of the background noises that we have, and wanted to encourage you to use the Q&A feature. So if you have any questions or anything like that, we'll definitely answer them throughout as well as at the end. And share with us where you're joining us from. Some people joined us from Utah in the other segments, as well as California. So chime in and put that in, and I'll give you guys a shout out, and I'll continue on the presentation. Just to remind you, it's being recorded. So if you have an opportunity to watch it on your own time, you can go on our YouTube channel at My HUECU just to rewatch it and just pick out some few little nuggets here and there that's useful to you. And at the end, we have a post survey just to let us know how we're doing, how we could have done it better, and how we can improve it in the future, just to, of course, meet your needs. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel at My HUCU, just to give you a little heads up. And of course, just for joining us today, we're going to enter you in a raffle. We have some prizes for you: $100 Spa Finder gift card, a 1-year subscription to the 10% Happier app, and we will also have some HUECU swag for you. So, without waiting any long, oh, I forgot. I have to tell you the difference between a credit union as well as a bank. So banks are here to really make some money. But we as a credit union, we exist simply for you, our members. And once you become a member of HECU, and you become a member for life, even if you're no longer part of Harvard. So your parents, your children, your grandparents, they can become part of the credit union as well. And we have tons of products and services to help you. We have CDs, we have checking accounts, different savings accounts, different loans that will cater specifically to you. And if you wanted to reach out to us, you can come to any of our branches. You can reach out to us online, as well as use any ATMs to, of course, conduct any of your financial needs. And just to remind you, so yesterday we had day 1, and we had a Q&A panel with some money experts. And then the section B, we had introducing Thrive, your financial education resources. So it basically broke it down to the nitty gritty about how Thrive works, how you as a member can take benefits from it. And today is day 2 of our session. And we just completed session 1 with household finances simplified. And right now we're going to start with your money and your mind. And we'll meet today's presenter, which is Dr. Lucy Obu Woburo. And she is at Mass General Hospital as well as McLean Hospital. So a little bit about her. So she is an MD, an MS, and MAS, a 4th-year resident at the Mass General Hospital as well as McLean Psychiatry Program. She's dedicated to improving the healthcare through social justice, and she's very passionate about diversifying the healthcare workforce. And she is also created us the increasing STEM exposure from K1, K through the 14th ages. And she is also just a recent grad. So we're really excited to have her here with us. And I'm going to have her take it away. I'm going to get off the camera, and she's going to go ahead and start this seminar. Thank you so much for joining us today. So it's such a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much, Dominique, and thank you for that very warm welcome. And thank you to our audience coming in from home. It is truly my pleasure to join you all today to talk about finance and mental health, two things that are really interconnected. And I hope that through the course of today, we can go through and have a good discussion. And as noted earlier, please feel free to, add questions. We can try to get to those at the end of the presentation. Let's go to the next slide, please. And just a quick overview of where we're going today. We could do hours long seminar on this topic. And so we're only going to really do kind of a quick snapshot of things. And of course, we can talk more towards the end. But our goals today is just to look at quickly, a brief overview of how this is affecting folks epidemiology wise, and then look at how financial stressors can really impact you, and your mental health. And how do we, think about strategizing to manage these financial stressors to limit their impact on our mental health, and then explore some resources that could be really helpful for all of us to consider as we're tackling our financial goals. Next slide, please. So if you're someone that finds that, financial stress is a source of stress for you, you are not alone. The numbers show that many Americans, if not most Americans, have been feeling the pinch of the financial stress, and not even counting the recent inflation and what we're going through right now. A Harris poll earlier on in the pandemic showed that 90% of Americans felt some financial stress. That's almost everyone. And looking even before that, when we had a relatively, low unemployment rate, high stock market, good GDP growth in 2018 and 2019, many Americans still suffer from financial worry. This is an ongoing issue. And a study done in 2019 showed that 70% of Americans have cried about money at some point in their lives. You can count me in that list. I have shed many tears over money, and over half have done so, in the year preceding that survey. And we saw that 44% of Americans in 2018 in this Northwestern Mutual study had financial concern as their number one stressor. The theme that plagued almost half of Americans was money. And more than 1 in 4 felt depressed about finances at least monthly, and 2 out of 10 weekly, daily, or hourly. So this is a huge issue. And if you fall anywhere in this, you're not alone. And we hope to discuss how we can understand the impact of this on our mental health and how it's affecting us, and how we can maybe get some help to have it not be such a huge stressor for all of us. Next slide, please. And we saw, this big study that was done in 2019, showed that, there's a lot of connection with having, financial stressors, being in debt, and having mental health challenges. Almost half of people with debt also have a mental health diagnosis. Now, this may be, something that they have not addressed specifically, or maybe even be undiagnosed, but we know that carrying debt is a huge stress on someone's mental health, and it can lead to having mental health, diagnoses and mental health issues. 86% of people with mental health challenges and debt say that their debt makes their mental health issues worse. Now that seems pretty clear to me, right? If you're already struggling, having debt can just feel like this extra burden on your shoulder, and it can worsen your mental health. And we know that people with depression and debt are 4.2 times more likely to still have debt over 1.5 years compared to their counterparts without debt. So having depression, makes it harder for you to tackle your debt. So it makes sense that they can actually have prolonged, debt life, because they're unable to really deal with all that it entails. And those with debt are thrice as likely to contemplate suicide due to that debt. This is really serious, right? This stuff can kill people, or even think about killing themselves. We have to take this really seriously. Next slide, please. So how does financial stress affect your mental health, right? We kind of alluded to some of this already, but we know that having financial stress in your life can lead to clinical depression. Now, this can affect your ability to focus, to concentrate, affect your appetite, your ability to actually do things to help you. This cloud of money hovering over you can have you feeling so down and hopeless. You can struggle to make decisions, struggle to, do basic things. And we know that it also can cause anxiety, right? When we have safety nets in our life, it can decrease our anxiety. When money is a huge source of like a safety net concern, if you don't know what's happening with your money and you're stressed out about it, you can feel really vulnerable and anxious. And that leads to excessive worrying. And that can lead to this rumination pattern that can cause physical symptoms from anxiety. Your heart rate could be, up. You could find yourself sweaty, shaking, and having panic attacks because you're so overwhelmed and consumed by worrying about money. And it can lead to low energy. It can just drain the life out of you. It can cause a lot of fatigue. And a lot of people, when they're really stressed out, they socially withdraw. You become self-isolating. You don't want to be around other people. And that can really have a severe impact on your mental health when you're not able to form those connections that help boost your spirit and nourish your soul. And like I mentioned in the previous slide, it can lead to suicidal thoughts, self-harming behavior. So suicidality is a huge serious factor that can, be a result of having financial stress. And people's relationships suffer. You may have heard this before, that one of the number one stressors in relationships for couples is money issues, right? When you're having money challenges in your relationship, it can decrease your ability to connect with your loved ones. It can decrease intimacy and ability to even engage in sexual activity. It can, cause people to really fracture and fragment because money has begun to tear them up. And it can also lead to physical, changes, like weight changes. People can sometimes, stop eating or eat too much because they're really stressed out. And that can lead to some, physical ailments such as, increased, blood pressure, like I mentioned before, increased heart rate. We have people who are struggling with gastrointestinal issues like nausea, having diarrhea and vomiting just from being so stressed out. And so this stuff can really impact your physical health, and we can't take it lightly what it can do to you. And it can affect your sleep, right? When you're not able to sleep, that can lead to increased risk for diabetes, for hypertension, for heart disease. And so it's really important that we address these issues to limit our ability to end up like getting sicker because we're not dealing with it. And of course, when you're stressed out, you take on maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? You can, like I mentioned before, overeat or undereat. You can take up substances as a way to cope from the anxiety and the stress. People start drinking more or using illicit drug use just because they don't know how to cope. It can lead to gambling behavior, trying to, have this compulsion that you may not be able to, to help. So all of these are ways in which financial stress can really have potentially debilitating and life-altering impact on someone's mental health. Next slide, please. And unfortunately, right, we know that financial insecurity in this country and around the world is not felt equally, right? All of these stress that I've already outlined to you sometimes can affect people differently based on, this country and globally, the racial inequality that has really affected our ability to bridge the gaps. So white families have more wealth than Black, Hispanic, and other multi-race families. America, and we can all acknowledge this, has a long, really brutal, structural racist policies that has been embedded in how we function as a society. This has led to, disparities in our educational system, in our labor laws, in our housing systems, in our criminal justice system that we're all maybe more familiar with, and even our financial services system. And all of this produces the really, really, massive racial inequality that we're seeing today, which can then lead to this ever widening gap that the pandemic has really made worse. Right? And so it's important that we also understand that when you have people with racial identities that are more minoritized with other identities, such as being part of the LGBTQ community, being, gender, disability, being an immigrant, all of these things can even worsen even more. So it is important to note that not everyone feels the same stresses the same way. And we have to address some of these structural changes to really make an impact in a positive way for people's financial stresses to go down, for their mental health to improve. Next slide, please. So all of this can be a vicious cycle, right? The cycle of money and mental health problems can really become really unmanageable for a lot of people. So you're struggling with these mental health issues that I've already outlined. You're unable to focus. You may lose your job. You may not be able to get out of bed to do what you need to do. You may end up having more physiological stressors that lead you to getting sicker. That leads to more financial difficulties. That leads to more stress. And then the more stress you have, more mental health problems you have, and on, it becomes this downward, vicious cycle that we really try to stop people from spiraling into. And it can affect your mental health in really scary ways. Next slide, please. And so what can we do? Like, you're like, Lucy, you have stressed me out. Like, what can I do? Like, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the stress. I am depressed. I am anxious. What should I do? And I think first and foremost, it's so important that we reach out and talk to someone. And I mean specifically, just starting even with your loved ones and your family and those that care about you. When we find ourselves in these really challenging, vicious cycle of financial stress and mental health issues, like I mentioned earlier, people tend to self-isolate. They tend to hide and avoid discussing these things. And sometimes that inner, low self-worth and feeling bad about themselves can lead to people not being able to get the help they need by even just sharing with someone, letting them know what you're going through, letting them know what you're struggling with. And it's so important to do that. It's important also to seek out professional help if you need it. Talking to a therapist, talking to someone who is well-equipped, in the mental health field to help you manage all the ways in which this has affected your mental health. It's so important not to struggle alone. Don't white knuckle it. Don't do it by yourself. You can get some help. At the end of my talk, we can look at ways we can reach out to get help. But it's also important to get help with those who are in the financial sector, right? People like HUECU, people that have staff here this is their job to help people fight these challenges. And I think it's important to know that there are resources available to help you. And also to begin to take an honest look at your own personal financial inventory. That could just mean literally just like making some outlines for yourself. Where's my money coming from? Like, what's my income, right? And what are my expenses? Like, just start small, like figuring out like where's my money going? Just listing your expenditures and figuring out where your money is going. Listen out your debt. Like, who do I owe what to, right? Who am I, in shackles with? Is it credit card? Is it student loans? Is it car loans? Just figuring out what your debts are is so crucial to helping you begin to figure things out. And then trying to figure out like, what are like small changes that I can make? What are tangible for me and where I am to begin to make small changes? Whether it's just like saying, I'll eat out just a little bit less this month, like small things that are manageable for you. It's so important to begin to do. And it's great for us to, bring in our HUECU specialists on this call who can offer specific insights on these other sections I've already talked about, like how to begin to get some help, how to begin to get some support, to do these step-by-step small plans to help you get a hold of the sometimes, paralyzing fear of tackling your financial life. I don't know if Migdalia or Dominique wants to offer some thoughts on that before we discuss some stress management strategies.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you everyone for joining. And as Lucy said, this is definitely, I want to emphasize, you're not alone. I think most of us have had some point, not just in the past, but in the future, probably currently are going to experience financial stress. And it's extremely important to just have that conversation. I know for myself, just speaking with my friends and all being on the same page of, oh my goodness, gas has gotten so expensive. Or, when I go food shopping, it's so much more expensive now. And talking about where to go, what are some ways that we can save money. So definitely having those conversations. And we at the credit union, we value the importance of financial well-being and mental well-being. So we provide free access to free financial counseling to all of you as members. You don't have to do anything, as just by being a member, you have access to this. And I put the link in the chat. It's through GreenPath for those of you that were on earlier. That was Luke's session previously, but It's huecu.org/green-path. They are accredited credit counselors. They can talk to you about, they're also budget counselors, federal student loan counseling, debt management. And also, if you are concerned or have any, they're thinking about buying a home, and now with the market and rates and costs are not quite sure, can I do this? You don't have to think about it by yourself. You also have access to our home loan team, our mortgage loan experts, and you can contact them at huecu.org/home-loans. You don't have to be a member to contact our mortgage loan experts. And then additionally, if you're ever in a situation that, let's say you receive a credit card offer or some personal loan offer, or just maybe aren't quite sure how to write a check, you need someone to talk to about finances, you're more than welcome to come to our branches or just call our support center or email us at myhuecu@harvard.edu, and we'll be able to help you. We've had many community members as well that have come into our branches, have called us in and said, you know what, I don't quite understand this. And then I'll go through in the second part a couple of slides that I have to just give you a couple of additional resources, but I just wanted to start off with those to let you know that you're not alone. You have a good amount of resources with us, and many that Dr. Lucy will mention shortly.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Migdalia. So it's so important to know that you don't have to face all of these things by yourself. As looming and as formidable as it can seem, there is ways to get support. And it's important for us to also begin to implement for ourselves some maybe small, tangible, personal stress management goals, right? For example, like even just going out for a walk, right? Just going out for a walk a few times a week can do wonders for your brain. It can increase endorphins. It can help you feel happier. Exercise, it's like the best prescription, I've never written, but, it's one of those things that anyone can just try to do. Try to look at, relaxation techniques, right? Say, for example, like you've never tried meditation. There are a lot of guidelines out there online, like, how to, begin to do some, personal meditation. There's some free apps out there, breathing exercises, like being able to just like, I'm feeling really anxious right now, just taking a deep breath for myself, just doing some relaxation things that can really help us. And then sleep, like I mentioned before, like sleep can be one of the first things that go when we're really, really stressed out, right? Trying to figure out how to get your Z's. That can help your brain reconsolidate information to be able to tackle all that's facing you. So getting some rest, if at all possible, can be one way of tackling this. And then it sounds silly, but like eating healthy, right? If you have a nutritious and healthy diet, it can help you have a healthy body and a healthy brain to be able to feel like you can actually, tackle your life. You can tackle what's facing you if your body and your mind are in alignment. And a healthy diet is a simple way of being able to do that. Like I mentioned, when you're really stressed out, it is so easy to take on more, maybe poor eating habits because you're so stressed out. But if we can try to get some of those things under control, these lifestyle strategies can pay dividends overall in helping you feel like you can tackle all that's facing you. And just even how we reframe for ourselves our purpose in life, right? Like trying to practice gratitude, like just for where you are, despite how bad it looks, despite how bleak the tunnel might be, like focusing on what are the good things in my life right now, today, are the things that I'm thankful for right now. Sometimes recentering ourselves in these moments of heightened stress can really help decrease ourselves and give us motivation and serve as a catalyst for us to tackle what is ailing us in these other domains. Next slide, please. And so, like I mentioned before, it's so important to know that there are resources out there. And I wanted to highlight these 6 resources. It's not all encompassing, but for some people, it'll be just a good starting point to begin to explore, where can I get some help when it relates to my mental health? I want to, put some focus on NAMI. NAMI is National Alliance on Mental Illness. This is the nation's largest grassroots organization dedicated for mental health and for those who have families dealing with mental health, people who themselves are struggling with mental health. They have a very user-friendly website you can kind of search through to figure out, where there might be resources for you, whether it's just going, joining a group based on where your local zip code is. You can find people locally where you are. They have NAMI chapters all over the country that you can get connected to. And then SAMHSA. This is the federal government large agency that is dedicated to a substance abuse and mental illness in America. And they have resources like finding a provider, finding, clinic, finding someone to help you with substance use, challenges, find someone to help you in your community. And it's just a wealth of information for you to delve into, can be kind of a one-stop shop for all things mental health and substance use as funded by a federal government. So your money, your tax dollars is going towards funding SAMHSA. So you have, an ownership in what the agency does. So feel free to utilize their resources to help you get to a better mental health. And then if you want to say, get a therapist for yourself, and you may find that, money is kind of tight. That's why maybe you might be hearing this call. I want to give a shout out to Open Path Collective. This is a nonprofit of network clinicians who are trying to provide affordable, sometimes sliding scales, sometimes even, no cost mental health care for those who are in need, right? This is nonprofit, and they really are focused on giving affordable mental health care. And if you are in crisis, as I mentioned, if you have found yourself at that side where suicidality, self-harm, fearing for your own safety might be coming up for you, there are 24/7 hotlines that you can call. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is so important for all of us to have memorized somewhere. It could be a family member, it could be for a friend, it could be for ourselves. If we're having issues, 1-800-273-TALK, 24 hours, they can help you talk through that crisis in the moment. And if texting is your thing, you could text, the NAMI to the crisis text line. That's someone that can text and work with you through that modality. And if you're someone who is in, potentially a domestic violence situation, you're someone who has been a victim of assault in any way, know that there's also resources and support for that. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is also one I feel like everyone should also be aware of to help, support you across multiple free services as well when you're going through acute trauma. And so I want to put this in people's radar. It's not all encompassing, but it could be a good first start to helping you navigate some mental health resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lucy. And we did put these in the chat, but we will also send these as part of our follow-up email. As of right now, we most likely will be able to send that email out next week, hopefully at some point early next week. But for now, we did include all of those in the chat, or you're welcome to take your phones and take a picture of the slide before I move forward to the next one. So I'll leave it up for a little bit. So if you do want to take a picture of it since we won't send it over until next week. But next, we're going to talk a little bit about what are some financial tips. So knowing that money can be stressful, knowing all the negative impacts of that stress onto our well-being, what are some things that we can do to essentially improve our money habits and try to reduce that stress? Now, one of the first things that we recommend is sort of having an understanding of what is your money personality. Dominique is going to put in the chat, or actually she's already put in the chat. Thank you so much, Dominique. A quick little quiz that you can take. You can do that right now. I will not be offended if you're doing that on the side. Take a moment right now. You're here for yourself. Just a couple of little, I think there are only 8 questions, and you'll get a better understanding of what exactly is your money personality. These are a little bit different than the previous section where Luke spoke about some money personalities, but the concept is still the same. It's having a better understanding of what is my relationship to money based off of maybe my upbringing, based off of maybe my goals. Knowing what my relationship is with money is going to give me the tool. It's going to empower me to know what are my money triggers? What are some behavioral changes I may need to put in place? Or what are some things that how can I utilize my money personality to help get me to the next step when it comes to my financial goals? I do want to say there isn't one best money personality. Many times when we look at a list or when we take a quiz, we want to know, well, did I score on the top score? Am I, did I get 100%? Am I in the best category? There isn't one personality that is better than the other when it comes to money personalities. And these also will change throughout your life. The key here is understanding and making adjustments so that your money personality can be aligned with what your goals are. So I'll go through these very quickly, but again, I recommend taking the quiz so you have a better idea. Most of us will fall into, maybe part of you will be mostly money worship, and then some of you might be money vigilant, but it doesn't mean that you're just 100% of one. Now, with money avoidance, these are the individuals that we tend to ignore our finances. Now, it may be something that we know, oh my gosh, I have to do that, but I don't have time. I don't want to deal with it. And that avoidance can lead to additional stress. And I'm going to go through these sort of very quickly and do an overview. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Lucy, who can probably speak, well, not probably, but can definitely speak to it more on medical terms and how that can manifest itself with our stress levels. Then you have individuals that may fall under money worship. Now, the challenge that can come up sometimes with money worship is that is putting overemphasis on money is going to solve everything, when sometimes and most times in life, there's not one thing that will solve all of our problems. Money status is when we are equating our self-worth to how much we have in the bank. This could be especially challenging if you have a significant amount of debt. And significant can be, it's whatever significant is to you. For some of us, having $1,000 is a lot of debt. For some of us, having 20,000, 100,000, it all depends. So that's significant. It's based off of your relationship with money. And then we have money vigilance, which at first glance, many people will say and think, oh, that's the one I want to be. That sounds great. I'm really focused on savings. But money vigilance can mean that you're missing out on experiences because you're mostly focused on saving. So you may have regrets in the future because everyone else is sort of that FOMO, fear of missing out. They're having all these experiences, but because you are so tied to your relationship with money and having to save, you may miss out on a significant part of your life. Now, there are a couple of things that I wanted to point out. For money, folks that have money worship, you may tend to overspend sometimes when you're in this category. So some of the ways to help utilize your money personality to help you reach your financial goals. If you're someone who's tends to be on the money avoidant, try to ignore your finances, great step. You're attending this session. That's already one great thing to be doing. Another thing is to schedule times on the calendar to go through your money, through money goals, to write down, research different money topics, but essentially putting time on the calendar, pre-committing, which I'll talk about shortly. If you're someone who is focused on money worship and thinking, and sometimes someone that may overspend because of how much you want to show that, I have money or I can borrow, and that's going to help make this other person happier, may help me be happier. Maybe as a money worshiper, one of the things you could do is give yourself budgets or guidelines. So for gifts, no gift will be over X amount when you're buying a gift for someone else, or when you go out to eat or have an entertainment for this month, you're going to try to keep it under XYZ. Now, for someone that equates their self-worth to their net worth, one of the things that you can potentially do is try to make a list of other things that bring you joy that are not tied to money at all. And then for someone who is money vigilant, budget money that is meant for joy. And truthfully, hopefully all money will bring us joy, but specifically for someone that's in money vigilant, schedule, however you want to call it. Maybe it's $100 a month to spend on something that's going to bring you joy. That's not just going to go into savings. Maybe it's $20, maybe it's $5. It's up to you. All of our budgets are personal. So finding an amount, maybe it's, treat yourself to whatever it is that may bring you joy. For those that are in the money vigilant category that may not be spending any money on themselves and therefore may be almost resenting their relationship with money and being overly anxious on, I have to have all this money in savings, I can't spend. But I'll turn it over to you, Lucy. Not sure if there's anything you want to add. I know I'm pretty sure you may have heard of these in some way or another, seen your patients manifest some of these stressors.
Yeah, I think it's important, like you mentioned, to know that we can fall across all four of these at different times in our lives, right? Like you said, no one can fit one particular thing always. And it's important to recognize that some of these things sometimes come from our background, from how we grew up, and from what our circumstances are. So like, for example, like someone who may have had a traumatic, childhood history or young adult history and had struggled, through what's called adverse, childhood events, and had gone through really scary and uncertain things in their lives, can tend to be towards, more money vigilant, focus, because they're used to not having security. They're used to having the ground underneath them feel quite shaky. So they can become overly fixated, overly frugal, hoping that if they really, really, really become hyper vigilant, maybe they can prevent that sense of insecurity they had all along from rearing its head. So knowing that, like, perhaps sometimes your history and what you have gone through, or maybe not have fully, process, maybe coming and manifesting itself in different things in your life. And maybe that could also be someone who maybe never really had a lot and now look at money as a status symbol, like you said, right? Like, money's tied into my self-worth. And sometimes then feeling like, why is it so that even when I have money, I still feel so insecure? I still feel so bad, right? It's important to recognize how our lives can dictate how we engage with money, right? And believing that maybe if I just had money, everything will go away. Like, if I just had money, I won't be sad anymore. I'll be really happy. Everyone will love me. I have good relationships. And when that's not the case, it's like, hey, wait, what's happening here? So setting expectations for yourself, sometimes being able to work with someone who can help you engage in, really, really healthy strategies and how these things manifest for you. And for some of us, it could just literally just be like, I don't even want to think about money. I don't even want to touch it because I'm so anxious about it. And that avoidance can lead to paralysis of inaction. You can just get so overwhelmed, you do nothing. And when you do nothing, sometimes things get worse. And if that's the case for you, so maybe you may need some help figuring out, like, hey, like, how am I really viewing this? What can I do to help me get through some of the ways in which I'm interacting, with my finances? And so, and again, you can have multiple parts of this, and at different points in your life, it could fluctuate. But being mindful and checking in with yourself, that introspection can also help navigate this process in a more healthier way.
Thank you, Lucy. And one of the things that Lucy's mentioned earlier during her section was making a plan. And part of that, having a plan can help reduce our anxiety because we're working towards something. And that is one takeaway that I recommend for folks, and you could do it right now, is take a moment and just write a financial goal down. What is a financial goal that you have that you want to reach by the end of 2022? And, take a moment, write it down right now. The reason that I say to write it down, it's more beneficial to write your goals down than to just say them or just type them up. There's something in the action of writing it. I can't, fortunately, I don't remember the study that I saw this in, but there's been studies that have shown that writing your goals down tends to be more beneficial. And take time in the next couple of weeks or so, maybe put it on your calendar to actually think about, what are the goals that I want to reach financially? And I know that with writing your goals, sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I'll give a couple of tips, upcoming slide. But one of the things that you can do as you're trying to put together a plan, and we're trying to reduce any anxiety or any stress that money is bringing to us, we want to be able to, make sure we go to bed on time and get our sleep, is to pre-commit to certain things. Everyone's different. For some of us, we like to put things on our calendar. For some of us, we just like to say, okay, at this time, I'll do so and so. But putting it on the calendar or setting a reminder. I know some people that live by a physical calendar that they have on their refrigerators. I know some individuals that prefer to have a planner. You can't actually, I'll show you, I have a massive planner that I almost always have with me, because it just gives me a sense of relief to be able to calm down my anxieties, because now it's like, okay, I have a plan. Things change. The plan may not always go as planned, but having the time to actually say, okay, tomorrow, Thursday, I'm going to talk to my partner and we're going to talk about our budget. Next, on this evening, I'm going to work on my budget. Next week, I'm going to research a topic that is of interest to me when it comes to personal finance, so that I can educate myself. And through that education, really empower myself so I'm not feeling as overwhelmed. And then for sort of just one tip when it comes to budgeting, if you are in a situation that you're possibly overspending, sometimes using cash can help, like taking the money out and essentially giving yourself a limit. So if I am going out for the evening, and this is something that I truly do with friends when I go out, even though now it's gotten a little bit easier with other online tools to just send however much money you spend. But let's say you're going out with a group and you know that the check may not be split evenly, but you're on a budget. You don't want to miss out on that. But I know for myself, sometimes I've gotten worked up of, okay, I know that they're going to eat or drink more than I am, but I want to go and I only want to spend this much money. Take cash, bring cash with you. And when that check comes, you know how much you've spent, you put down your cash plus, tip or whatever amount it is for that bill. And that can be one way to sort of help alleviate some of the anxiety of, I don't want to overspend, especially because of someone else. Not sure if there's anything else that you want to add to either of these or any other general tips that you may have of how pre-commitment and writing goals can be beneficial for us.
It's sometimes really nice to just see things like, outline, because when it's in our head, it can take on a much more daunting entity. It's like, oh my God, I have all these things, but being able to, like you said, write it down and make these small and, steady steps. It doesn't have to be huge things, but a sense of accomplishment that can set in can be really powerful to help push you towards making more changes. Like, wow, I kept within my, cash, goals for this week. Pat yourself in the back, try another step. So these incremental things, knowing that you don't have to tackle it all at once, because finances, especially when you have multiple things that are causing you financial stress, whether it is debt, whether it's loss of income, whether it's familiar responsibilities that cause you to spend a lot more money to help others, there can be a whole lot like of a tsunami. It can feel so big, right? And it can feel so overwhelming. But knowing that these bite-sized changes does have very powerful impact in changing the trajectory of your money challenges is so crucial. You can't tackle it all, the big picture all at once. That's where that sense of where people can get defeated can come from. Like, oh my gosh, like I tried everything all at once and it didn't work out. Like I can never do it. And that can become almost like a self-fulfilling, prophecy. Like by trying to do it all at once and in these big bites and it doesn't work out, it can feel really hard to get yourself up to try again. So small steps, right? Small steps can lead to a very, very long road traveled. And that's a really good thing I want to emphasize here.
And that's such a great segue to the next tip that we have, which is this goal gradient, which is exactly what Dr. Lucy is speaking of, is taking a goal and breaking it down into smaller pieces. Now, I apologize for looking down. I took some notes while Lucy was speaking on just some of the things that we could do to help alleviate or reduce stress. And she mentioned having a good diet, sleeping well, walking, exercising. And I realized I was like, that can be overwhelming when you're doing none of those. And especially, I know for myself, when I'm not feeling good, that's the last thing I want to do is go to the gym. As much as I love working out, when I don't feel good, I don't want to get up. So I like how breaking it down into smaller goals, like, you know what, maybe today I'll just go walk around the block, or, yes, I would love to have an extremely healthy diet, but maybe today I'll just start off with having oatmeal for breakfast or eating fruit or having a salad for lunch. So implementing small goals. Maybe it's, yes, I want to get 8 hours of sleep, but right now I'm at 4. So maybe it's okay. Maybe try to get 4.5, maybe try to get 5 and slowly increasing it. And when it comes to finances, some of the things that we can do is we know that it's important for us to have emergency fund. It is going to be one of those things that life is going to happen, and having an emergency fund, having money set aside to help deal with when things break, when emergencies come up, it's going to give us a sense of peace. And it's also going to help us so that we're not feeling almost like this cloud over our heads of, my goodness, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What if something breaks? What am I going to do? All these things eat up on us. And, I can speak to when I didn't have an emergency fund and having to constantly worry about this versus now where I have been able to put some money aside. It's no longer it doesn't feel like an emergency. It's more of an inconvenience. It's like, okay, I have to dip into that account to take money because my car broke down, or because, I have unexpected travel, and there may be other situations, but when we think about saving for unexpected expenses, it can be really challenging because we're told to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. That is a lot of money. I don't know about you, but when I think about that number, that paralysis that Dr. Lucy mentioned, I don't want to move forward. I'm like, I'm not going to reach that. That's 3 to 6 months of expenses where we live in this economy. That's a lot of money. So one of the things that we recommend is to break that down into smaller goals. So if I'm trying to save $10,000 in an emergency fund, and I have $0 in my account, going from 0 to 10,000, overwhelming, right there. Most of us probably are just going to laugh, just like I did. Like, you can't, 0 to 10,000, come on. But instead of thinking of that as the goal that I'm going for, yes, it's a goal, it's out there, breaking it down into smaller ones. So if I have $0 in my savings account right now, maybe my first goal is, or maybe I don't have a savings account, especially $0. So maybe my first goal is to open a savings account. For those of you that are members of the credit union, you could have multiple savings accounts under your main account. I know for myself, I have one for my emergency fund. I have one for travel. So you can set up multiple accounts. So that is something that's very simple. Just go. And that could be one of the things you do this week. Open a savings account and start, put $20 in it, put $10 in it. Just start with opening it. Then the second step would be, think of an amount that would be feasible for you to save in the next 2 to 3 months. It depends on personalities again. Some of us may want to say, I want to save this by the end of the summer or by September 1st. Some of you may prefer to say, I want to do it in the next 3 paychecks, whatever works for you, but set an amount, and once it should be an amount that you can reach. So maybe I'm going to try to save $100. Maybe it's $250, whatever works within your budget. You can do automatic savings so that it's going from once you get the money deposited from your work, or just have it pulled from your checking account so you don't have to think about it. That's one less thing to think about, one less thing to worry about. And once you reach that point, let's say I reach the 250 by September 1st, then maybe by the end of the year, I want to reach 500. And then in a couple of months, I want to reach 750, then 1,000. And slowly, I'm going to be making progress towards my goal. And I should celebrate that. I should realize, like, okay, I'm doing something. And that's going to hopefully help us feel better because we're taking the appropriate steps. And hopefully that may also motivate us to stay on track. Not sure. I know you spoke a little bit about it, Lucy, but not sure if there's anything else that you think would be beneficial for our attendees to know.
No, I think you captured it, quite beautifully. Slow and steady, always wins the race, right? Don't take too big of a bite that you can't quite chew. Like, all these colloquialisms, they do have an application here. It's always important to just take it one day at a time, and knowing that there's going to be a non-linear process, right? It's not going to all be like you start and it's just all smooth sailing from there. It's going to be bumpy road. It might be like a little bit of a up and down for a while, and that's okay. Expect that, right? Be kind to yourself and offer yourself grace. It's so important to know that you're going to have challenges along this path that you've set up for yourself. Expect that would happen so that when it does happen, you know how to nurture and cushion yourself from that inevitable feeling of like, I'm a failure and I'm never going to get this right, or I'm too ill-equipped to do it, or like, what's the point? Like, let's not even just I'm over it, right? That can come. And so be mindful that you can, experience those things, anticipate it, and then support yourself and know, you know what, it's okay to have it be bumpy. It's okay that I regress back, several months from my initial goals. Start up again, right? Don't give up from these small challenges or even these large challenges, because when we stop all the way, that's when we really put ourselves in that difficult place. But if we just try that small thing next time, it's okay. Self-forgiveness, self-grace, that is a tool that you can give yourself whenever you find yourself feeling that sense of like, what the heck? What's the point of it all? Thank you.
Yeah, I love that grace and that self-love, because many times we speak to ourselves in ways that we would never speak to our friends. We may say, oh, how dare I not have missed this? But we wouldn't go to a friend and be mean to them. But sometimes we're, unfortunately mean to ourselves. So I really appreciate that. And, I have this visual a couple of weeks ago. My dog is fine now, but a couple of weeks ago, for whatever reason, he was losing balance with his back legs. But he would still keep walking. Like he would just drag his little, use the front two legs and just drag himself to keep going. And we were telling him like, no, stop, you're fine. Just give it a second. And he's fine now. But it just such a visual of he just didn't stop. Like he, it's like, oh, not all four are working. Okay, I got two. And he was smiling. I wish I had a photo to share, but he was just smiling, kept going. And I think that's something that we need to remember ourselves. It's, maybe all four legs won't work at once, but we still have the other two, or you still have that one. And just know that it's okay when this happens. You have resources to help you. And it's also an opportunity to reevaluate and see what can you do differently. And remember that even if, especially let's go back to that emergency fund. Let's say that I am trying to save $500 by the end of the year. Maybe I don't reach that 500, but I reach 400. That is still so much better than had I done nothing, had I not even had that savings account. So keep in mind that anything that you do is still progress, and it's still putting you in the right direction. So I know we have some time for some Q&A. So if you do have anything that either myself or Dr. Lucy can help address or help provide resources, please let us know. I know that there was one question that came in the chat. How can I get help with a will? There are many different resources. Overall, we recommend reaching out to an estate planner, a lawyer that focuses on estate planning. One of the things that I would recommend, however, is to check with your employer. Many employers have employee assistance programs. I know that the Mass General Hospital system does, where Lucy is a part of MGB. I know that we do at Harvard. We have an employee assistance program through KGA, because many times your employee assistance program could have access to estate planning attorneys, or also check with your human resources and benefits office, because there are many times that you can opt into a monthly payment to have access to low fee lawyers. I know that's something that we do offer at Harvard, and I do know that they offer estate planning, but that is specific to Harvard. I'm not sure, Lucy, if you know anything about MGB or any other resources that can help.
I love the idea for EAP and just asking wherever, if you have employment, because again, not everyone is employed, but if you do happen to have employment, talk to your benefits office and just say, this is something that's important to me. I want to be able to curate a will. What do you recommend? Those folks are experts in benefits and planning, and they could be a great resource for you. If you do have an employee assistance program, even better. But never hesitate to at least ask the people that are sometimes hiring you when it comes to benefits planning, because they may know, if it's not them, who may be of support. And some banks have HECU, like some banks have these really vast resources that can help you with estate planning. And of course, it's important to even talk to loved ones who may have done a will in the past and see who they have used, because having that recommendation could also be of value.
Thank you. And good point. For those that may not be employed, employee assistance programs typically are for everyone in that household. So for myself, it could be applicable to my parents, it could be applicable to my partner. So just even if you're not employed, maybe someone in your household has these resources, and you should be able to access them through. But unfortunately, we don't have any specific attorneys that we can recommend at the credit union, but I am taking notes. We are putting that on the list of something that we hopefully can provide in the future. I don't see any additional questions at the moment, so I just want to give a big thank you to Lucy for all that you have done and all the wisdom that you've provided. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Dominique, to close us off.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. We really appreciate you joining us here today. I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a Thrive, and that is a financial wellness that we have for all of you. It's a free personal resources that we have, and you can visit it at huecu.org. And it's for those who just want to know just different things. So we have the counseling, free financial counseling. We have blogs, we have workshops, we have worksheets, short videos, and a bunch of different calculators that you can use at any time. And also wanted to remind you that this session is being recorded. So if you wanted to go back and over anything that Dr. Lucy went over today, you can play it, and we should have it ready for you on our YouTube channel at my HUECU next week sometime. So thank you again, Dr. Lucy, for joining us. And also at the end, we have a survey just to let us know how we did, how we're doing, how we can do it better at huecu.org/survey. So just a few minutes of your time to just take that little survey for us. And just wanted to also reiterate that this is for an educational purpose. Our presentation here today, earlier this afternoon, as well as the other two sessions yesterday. And it's just to really make sure that you can take the next steps and visit your financial planner to let you know what specific things would work for you as well as your financial success. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. Thank you so much to Luke earlier. And wanted to remind you, if you want to stay in touch with us, you can visit us at huecu.org, any of our social media handles, which is Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, at my HUECU. And, we're located, our main branch is at Harvard Square, but we have a couple of different branches, MGH, as well. This is one of the places that Dr. Lucy uses and works at. So we really appreciate you taking the time. For those of you who stuck around with us the entire two sessions today, thank you so much for your time. And again, the other two sessions from yesterday will be available on our YouTube channel. We really appreciate having you here today. Have a great afternoon.